Welcome to Creatures of Desire, a podcast devoted to enchanting stories of women loving women, set in worlds filled with magic, myth, and irresistible supernatural allure. From forbidden romances between witches and warriors to tender connections with fae, mermaids, vampires, and other fantastical beings, this channel celebrates Sapphic fantasy in all its sensual, emotional, and imaginative forms. Here is today's story.
The Vampire's Librarian, a story about a librarian who discovers the lady of the manor is more than she seems. Emma stepped into the candlelit library, her heart pounding in anticipation of meeting Lady Casha Thornwood for the first time. The remote Victorian manor was shrouded in mystery and intrigue, much like its enigmatic owner. "Good evening, Miss Emma," came a melodious voice from the shadows. Emma turned to see a tall, elegant woman emerge from behind a towering bookshelf. Her platinum blonde hair cascaded over her shoulders, almost as white as her skin, which was like alabaster. Piercing blue eyes held Emma's gaze for a long moment before Casha spoke again. "Welcome to Thornwood Manor. I trust your journey was uneventful." Emma nodded mutely, unable to tear her eyes away from the other woman's arresting beauty. There was an aura of power and age about her that both fascinated and unnerved Emma. "I appreciate you agreeing to come here at this late hour," Casha continued as she glided towards a large oak desk piled high with ancient tomes and scrolls. "I find myself rather sensitive to light these days." Casha's voice held an undercurrent of something dark and dangerous, sending a shiver down Emma's spine despite the warmth of the room. "Of course," Emma replied at last, clearing her throat nervously as she set down her satchel of tools. "I'm here to catalog your collection. Where would you like me to start?" Casha waved a slender hand towards the shelves lining every wall. "Feel free to begin wherever you'd like. I've been away for some time and am eager to see what new treasures have come into my possession." As Emma began sorting through the books, she couldn't help but feel Casha's gaze heavy upon her, not in a predatory way, but rather with an intensity that spoke of deep interest and intrigue. "What is your area of expertise, Miss Emma?" Casha asked as she settled gracefully into a high-backed leather chair. "I would love to hear about it." Emma found herself captivated by the other woman's intelligence and curiosity, two traits they quickly discovered they shared in abundance. As the night wore on, they fell into deep conversation about their favorite authors, most treasured literary works, and philosophical musings. Casha seemed particularly drawn to discussing existentialism and the nature of time itself. Her insights were profound and provocative, leaving Emma both enthralled and slightly unsettled by how much her thoughts aligned with Casha's. As they delved deeper into these topics, Emma couldn't help but notice a growing physical awareness between them, the way Casha would lean in close when making a point or brush their fingers together as they turned pages side by side. At one point, Emma caught Casha staring at her neck with an intensity that made her skin prickle. But before she could comment on it, Casha looked away, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "I apologize if I've been too forward," Casha murmured, breaking the spell of their conversation. "You're just so fascinating." Emma felt her own face heat up at the compliment, though she wasn't sure why. There was something deeply intimate about this exchange, more than mere intellectual connection or attraction. As they continued working side by side into the wee hours of the morning, Emma began to feel a strange sensation like tiny needles pricking at her skin, almost as if someone were watching them from the shadows. But every time she looked up, there was nothing but darkness and dust motes dancing in the candlelight. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Casha declared it was time for Emma to retire for the night. She led her through winding corridors to a sumptuous guest room where a four-poster bed awaited, piled high with silken sheets and velvet pillows. "I hope you find everything to your liking," Casha said softly as she stood in the doorway. "Sleep well, Miss Emma." And then she was gone, leaving Emma alone in the opulent chamber. As Emma began to undress for bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. Some unspoken understanding passed between herself and Casha. In the days that followed, Emma threw herself into cataloging the collection with renewed fervor. Each night brought new discoveries and deeper discussions with her enigmatic hostess. They would spend hours lost in each other's company, poring over ancient tomes or debating the finer points of literature and philosophy. But as the days turned to weeks, Emma couldn't help but notice that Casha was growing more pale and gaunt with each passing night. Her once vibrant blue eyes now seemed dull and haunted. When Emma questioned her about it, Casha would wave away her concerns with a feeble smile. "I'm afraid I've been neglecting my health of late," she confessed one evening as they sat together by the roaring hearth in the library. "I fear this light sensitivity has left me rather malnourished." Emma's heart clenched at the sight of her so weak and frail. Without thinking, she reached out to take Casha's hand in hers, a gesture meant to offer comfort but which ignited something else entirely. "Miss Bellwether," Casha murmured, the scent of sandalwood and something faintly metallic clinging to her like a second skin. "Would you grace me with your presence elsewhere?" Her voice was a silken thread pulling Emma away from the room, away from everything familiar and sensible, away towards the promise of that unsettlingly beautiful smile curling her lips. Emma's mouth went dry as she swallowed the protest stuck there. She nodded mute while Casha glided through the library's labyrinthine corridors like a phantom. The scent of old paper intensified, mingling with something distinctly feral. A warmth bloomed in Emma's chest that had nothing to do with the crackling fireplace. It spread out, pooling low and hot, driven by the way Casha's fingertips grazed her arm as she led her through the dimness. The study door stood ajar, revealing not just books stacked like petrified forests but something else entirely, an intoxicating aura of power wrapped in velvet drapes and shadowed corners. A low groan seemed to emanate from within, and Emma realized it was coming from Casha herself. Not the melancholic sigh she'd heard before, but something deeper, more primal, resonating through her bones like a tuning fork struck against glass. Casha turned towards her then, a flicker of something raw and vulnerable in those amethyst eyes. She reached out, not for Emma's hand this time, but to pull back the loose tresses framing her face. "I haven't had proper nourishment in weeks," Casha whispered, her voice husky as if unused. The scent that clung to her now was intoxicatingly sweet, like blood orange dipped in honey laced with something sharp and metallic that set Emma's pulse racing. She wanted to touch it, to taste it, to understand what lay beneath the surface of those pale, luminous skins stretched taut over high cheekbones. Casha stepped back, offering a wry smile that did nothing to hide the tremor running through her. She gestured towards a plush velvet chaise lounge nestled before a dying fire. "Please," she breathed, voice rough with need. "Won't you join me?" Emma didn't hesitate. She moved across the room as if propelled by an unseen force drawn to Casha like a moth to flame. The scent was overwhelming now, intoxicating and earthy. It felt like coming home after years away. The chaise lounge was large enough for two. Emma settled onto the plush cushions with a soft sigh, feeling the warmth of the dying embers against her back. Casha knelt before her, eyes locked on Emma's as if drinking her in. Those amethyst pools seemed to see right through to her, every thought, every pulse thrumming in her veins. "So beautiful," Casha breathed, reaching out with one hand to cup Emma's cheek. The touch was cool at first, almost glacial against the heat of her own skin, then warmed, vibrant life flooding from fingertips that lingered just a fraction too long. Emma leaned into the touch, wanting more, needing it. Her breath hitched as Casha's other hand traced the line of her jaw, thumb brushing over the curve of her lips. It was a delicate exploration, full of hunger and reverence in equal measure. "I crave you," Casha murmured, voice dropping to a husky whisper. She tilted Emma's chin upward, forcing her eyes to meet those liquid amethyst pools. "Let me taste you." Emma couldn't speak, could only nod as Casha leaned forward. A tremor ran through her chest as cool, fragrant lips pressed against hers light at first, a gentle probing, then deepening with insistent need. Casha's tongue slid into her mouth, seeking and finding, tasting, claiming. It was the taste of centuries, of hidden desires and loneliness so profound it resonated in Emma's very bones. The kiss deepened, growing possessive, urgent. Casha's hand moved down to Emma's waist, pulling her closer until she could feel the heat radiating from her body, a warmth that spoke of more than just the dying embers of the fire. A gasp escaped Emma's lips as Casha's fingers tightened around her hips, pressing her flush against the chaise lounge cushions. "You are so sweet," Casha murmured against her mouth, pulling back slightly to gaze at her with an almost feral intensity. Her eyes swept down Emma's throat, lingering on the pulse throbbing there before finding their way back up to meet hers. So very, very sweet. Emma felt dizzy, adrift in a sea of warmth and desire. The scent that clung to Casha was intoxicating, now blood orange and honeyed spice, and something undeniably feral, something primal and achingly alive. Her own fingers found purchase in the silken strands of Casha's hair, pulling her closer still, deepening the kiss until it devoured them both whole. It was a collision of desperate need and delicate exploration, teeth-grazed lips, tongues intertwined, bodies pressed together as if trying to become one. Casha shifted slightly, sliding down along Emma's front until she lay between her legs, her breasts pressing against Emma's belly with a warmth that sent shivers crawling across her skin. The scent of Casha was almost overwhelming, now heady, intoxicating, and Emma could feel her breath hitch in her throat as a hand slid beneath her skirt, finding the heat pooling between her thighs. "I need you," Casha breathed into the curve of her ear, voice rough with want. let me taste you." Emma didn't resist when Casha's lips descended upon her, claiming her skin with hungry kisses that trailed down her heated core. Each touch sent sparks shooting through Emma, a mingling of fear and ecstasy, the thrilling certainty that she was on the brink of something ancient, something wild, something infinitely satisfying. The hunger in those amethyst eyes mirrored her own, and as Casha's tongue brushed across the soft pulse point just below her hip bone, Emma surrendered completely to the touch, to the scent, to the overwhelming pull towards this impossibly beautiful creature who craved not only blood, but a depth of connection that resonated with every atom in her being. Casha gasped softly as Emma's fingers intertwined with her own, their eyes locking in an intense gaze filled with unspoken longing and desire. In that moment, Emma finally understood the true nature of what she was feeling, and it terrified her even as it thrilled her to her core. "Casha," Emma breathed out hoarsely. But before she could say anything more, a sudden commotion erupted from outside the manor, shouts and the clatter of hooves against cobblestones. Casha was on her feet in an instant, moving towards the window with preternatural speed. "What's happening?" Emma asked urgently as she followed suit. Casha peered out into the night, her expression darkening like a storm cloud. "Hunters," she hissed through gritted teeth. "Vampire hunters." Emma felt her blood run cold at those words, even as her mind raced to catch up with their implications. "What do you mean?" she demanded. Casha turned back to face Emma, her eyes now glowing like hellfire. "I'm not what I seem, my dear," she said softly but with a finality that left no room for argument, "and neither are they." Emma opened her mouth to protest, to demand answers and explanations, but before she could get a word out, Casha was upon her, kissing her fiercely even as those sharp teeth grazed Emma's lower lip. A single drop of blood welled up where Casha had nipped her, glistening like a ruby in the candlelight, and with that first taste it seemed as if something inside Casha snapped. She threw herself at Emma with a ferocity that left them both breathless and aching for more. "What are you doing?" Emma gasped out between kisses even as she found herself arching into Casha's touch. "Claiming what is rightfully mine," Casha growled against her neck, "before it is too late." And then there were no more words, only the feel of skin on skin and teeth grazing tender flesh. The heady rush of arousal mixed with the coppery tang of blood filling their senses until they both teetered on the brink of oblivion. In that moment of exquisite agony and ecstasy, Emma knew she would follow Casha anywhere, to hell itself if need be. This connection between them went beyond mere desire or love. It was a bond forged in fire and shadow, one that transcended the very fabric of time itself. As they clung to each other in the aftermath of their passion, Emma could feel something changing inside her, some fundamental shift in her being that left her both terrified and exhilarated. "Casha," she whispered hoarsely as she stared up at the ceiling with unseeing eyes, "what have you done to me?" Casha pressed a gentle kiss to Emma's forehead before answering softly. "I've given you a choice," she murmured back, "eternal life by my side or return to your mortal existence and forget this night ever happened." Emma swallowed hard against the lump rising in her throat. This was it, the moment of truth. Would she choose darkness for love's sake? Or would she walk away from the most incredible experience of her life? For one heart-stopping instant, Emma considered turning back, returning to her mundane world with only these memories as solace. But then she looked into Casha's eyes and saw a future painted in blood-red hues, a future filled with adventure and danger and unfathomable delights. "I choose you," Emma declared at last, her voice steady despite the trepidation curling in her gut. "I want this, I need it." Casha smiled then, a slow curve of lips that promised both pleasure and pain to come. "Then welcome to your new life, my love," she purred, drawing Emma close once more as they prepared for whatever lay ahead. And so began their journey into the unknown, two souls bound together by blood and fate, ready to face whatever challenges or joys awaited them in this brave new world. The end. Thank you for listening to another Creatures of Desire story. Please like this video so that it gets recommended to more listeners, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more Sapphic tales of fantasy and romance.